Pandora's Awareness Stories and Circulate Life-Changing Wisdom. I am your host, Asher, and our guest today is the incredible Cindy and Mariah. They get to talk about failure with me today because we put failure on front stage, and we get to share some of the backstage conversation that we have with failure that you guys probably don't get to hear often, but we're going to talk about it today. And we will start with Cindy. If you don't mind, Cindy, tell us a little bit about you. That's a short introduction about what you specialize in, who you being a hero to, and how you add value to the world. And we're going to jump into Mariah as well.
Fantastic. Well, first of all, thank you, Asher, for inviting me here today. Pleasure to be here. So I'm a transformational life coach. I'm also a certified yoga therapist, a Reiki master teacher, and an EFT practitioner. I specialize actually in helping women navigate the aftermath of divorce because and this will lead into the failure here, having gone through a heartbreaking divorce myself, I truly understand some of the struggles that come with that. For me, there was a lot of self-blame. The financial worries were huge for me, being a single parent, and then what it was like getting back into the dating scene. And so that, to me, is my biggest mission, is to help women that are in that scenario move through that process faster and with greater ease. We do that by helping to rebuild strength, re-engage personal power, reignite that personal passion, and renew your heart. So that's kind of where I'm at. That's a little bit about me in the nutshell and who I like to serve.
Thank you so much, Cindy. Mariah, take it away. How about you?
All right. Thank you also for having me here. I'm so honored to be on here. So I am Mariah and I am a digital marketing strategist. However, I was a trauma coach for about 6 years before this, and I'm pivoting over to digital marketing strategist, and I help Christian coaches. I set up their back end systems, like an automated lead generation system, so they don't have to worry about content creation. I do all of the tech stuff, and then I give them a strategy to put it in place, so nobody has to go in circles and try and figure everything out on their own. And so um I love working with other coaches, and I'm a nerd whenever it comes to tech. I really am. I love websites. I love using Canva and making pretty stuff. So that's where I'm at right now.
We're gonna keep you there for a little bit. That's cool. Thank you so much for sharing. Okay, so
Thank you.
since the theme of today is around failure, and everybody got their own definition of failure. Sometimes you ask people what failure means to you. Some people might give out the whole list of being, just like when you ask somebody what leader mean to you or what success mean to you. It's all different for everybody because based on our experiences. But today we get to put failure like an object on front stage, and we get to talk about failure like it doesn't even attach to us, right? We're just gonna talk about it, but we're gonna talk about what it actually means to us in our own life. So I'm gonna start off with you, Cindy, and if you had to, give us your take, your first story, or one of your biggest failure that really changed your life, transformed your life in some of the biggest way that you want to share with us, if you don't mind.
Yeah, no problem. Like I said, I think the biggest thing for me at the time was the divorce. It was a situation that I was completely blindsided. I had no idea it was coming. And in fact, I found out that my ex no longer wanted to be married the same weekend that I found out that I was pregnant with our child. And so it was a completely devastating time for me. There wasn't any reason. He couldn't give me a reason. It was just that basically said it wasn't me, it wasn't you, Cindy. So I was like, okay. I went home to my parents' house, and interestingly enough, the first thing out of my dad's mouth was, "What did you do?" And so again, that very old school, generational kind of mentality, if you will. And I took that so to heart that, what did I do? And so I went into this whole thing, and I know a lot of women that I serve have gone through this too, where you start to say, oh my gosh, what's wrong with me? I took it so personally that I failed at this marriage. And it was like, I should have been prettier. I should have been smarter. I should have been more in some way. And I just felt like, I wasn't good enough. Like something was really wrong with me. And so, I did feel like a failure. I felt like, oh my gosh, what is really wrong with me? And then, of course, society tacks on to, again, this was many years ago at this point, but at that time, and I think it still holds true somewhat today, there's a lot of labels for women that are divorced as well. And failure comes up a lot, like, you're a failure. You can't, kind of keep things together. So I'd have to say that's really the backdrop of what I considered the biggest failure for me. But it was the heartbreaking event, but it also was the heart opening event that actually led me down this incredible personal growth and development journey into really finding who I am, because I didn't really know then who I was. And so for me, what was the big failure actually turned into something much bigger, in terms of finding myself, and the big things that came along with that were, again, building that strength, having this incredible found resilience to pull me through some of those situations, because it was not an easy proposition. I mean, my ex and I split when our daughter was 9 months old, and it was not an easy time at all. I was left with like a ton of debt. So yeah, not a fun time.
Not fun time. But here's something interesting I was listening to. When you first started, you was the introduction. You said something. You gave me 3 Ds. I wrote them down. You said divorce, dating, and doubting, right? And I was trying to think about, because a lot of people get divorced in America. I mean, a lot of places around where they get divorced, and it seems like it's something that happens a lot. But then when it happens to you, it's a whole different story. Like when it happens to you, like wow, like just going back, like you said, you wasn't even expecting that thing coming. Like you didn't see it coming. Oftentimes, that's what happened to a lot of people. Never saw it coming. Such a surprise. Like it just sneak upon them and like, wow, this happened to me. Now what do I do? So what did you do, Cindy? What did you do?
What did I do? Again, it's been a long, long journey. One of the things that didn't serve me well was I tucked a lot of feelings. I didn't want to feel it. So I did a lot of this. Well, I don't want to feel that now. I don't want to feel that now. So I kind of ignored a lot of the feelings that I actually needed to feel and express and go through, because I say programming, my early messaging is that, you just pull yourself up by your bootstraps. You don't complain, you don't cry in the corner. Weakness was like not acceptable. So to me, it was like, I'm just going to like put my, nose to the grindstone and do whatever it is that I need to do. And so that was kind of the mindset. But I also, had this mindset, okay, I have this, it's cliche. You've probably heard this a lot of times, or people that are listening to, turn your lemons into lemonade. And that was kind of like my mantra was, okay, this happened, but I am not going to let it get me down. Even though I felt awful inside, the external facade was, I can do this. And so I just literally, I kept telling myself, I can do this, I can do this, I can do this. I'm strong enough, I can do this. Plus, I really leaned into forgiveness and gratitude. Those were the two big things for me to actually move forward. Even though I was so heartbroken and I was angry, don't get me wrong, I was heartbroken, I was angry at my ex, but I really felt I needed to forgive, and not even so much for his sake, right? It was for my sake to be able to actually move forward. Plus, this was still my daughter's dad. And it wasn't like this was a surprise pregnancy. We had actually been trying for almost a year to get pregnant. So to me, I didn't want to carry a lot of hostility around inside of me around her, because this was still her dad. And so I was really cognizant of that relationship and wanted to preserve that. So forgiveness was huge for me, but then just gratitude for all that I did have, even though I lost so much. And I mean, it's not just the relationship that you lose. I lost a lot of friends. I lost a future that I thought I was going to have. I lost the father to my child being there with us, in the same household. So there was just so many levels of losses that I could have focused in on, but I was like, that is just going to keep me way down here, and it's going to keep me in feeling this I'm a failure mentality. So gratitude ended up being a huge practice for me every single day to like just keep the positive moving and just appreciating what I did have.
Mm. I'm gonna bring Mariah into this conversation. So thank you so much for sharing that, Cindy.
Yeah.
So Mariah, I know when Cindy was sharing her stuff, I noticed you have a lot of like animation going on over there. So I'm curious to know what was happening in your mindset. What were your thoughts on that? What you were sharing?
Um, well, first of all, thank you, Cindy, for being like so open about these things because the more that you're open about that, I know that there's plenty of people who are like, oh, like I feel that, like what you were saying, and just like you gave them the answer. Like the answer is the gratitude and it finding the gratitude in these little things. And I basically feel like you grieve, like you were grieving, but while somebody was still alive. And so that's what and I just have a heart for people who, like, you can tell her heart and you can tell that she's genuine and now she's helping other people because she knows how they feel. And so, I just, I love hearing other people's stories.
Mm. Okay, so if we gotta tie your journey into this, so if you had to share some of your own failures, kind of give Cindy some insight into your story as well. What are some of your biggest failures that you want to share?
Um, well, so, I have, 7 years sober from, heroin, and I was in my addiction for about 10 years,
Mm-hmm.
and I was homeless. I overdosed 12 times and then I went to rehab 27 times. So
Wow.
I would run away or I would, I would just try again. Okay, let's try again. Let's try again. I had my I had lost custody of my son, so I feel like I failed as a mother. Um, and I think overall, like that is probably one of my biggest fears is failing as a mother. Now that I'm sober, like that is like my like if a random stranger told me that I was a bad mom, I'd brush it off. But so like my kids telling me like, oh, like you failed us, like that is like my worst fear. But I got my son back, thank God. I went to my 27th rehab and I've been sober ever since. And uh, I every single during my addiction, I really was just trying to like I had a good childhood growing up. It wasn't like a horrible childhood. I didn't have any reason to use really. It was just because I liked the way that it made me feel. I could come up with a million excuses of things that that of why I use, but the real reason is because I liked the way it made me feel. Um, but I did. I would go to rehab and I would leave and I would run away and, I'd go all over the country, and still find a way to get back home and get high. And so I think that I numbed myself out so much, like she was talking about, like tucking it away. I would literally just have like I would have like blinders on to, okay, you need to get better for your son. And like I would just put blinders up, like it doesn't matter, just keep moving, like keep going, go get your drugs. But the healing process from that, what it took a year. Um, and I think the hardest part, like she was talking about, that's another reason why, is because forgiveness and her forgiveness and another person, but I had to work towards forgiveness of myself. Um, because that like everything I put my family through, my son through, myself through, I wasted so many years. And so I was homeless for a really long time. So now I own a home and we have vehicles and we have food in the house and I can take a shower whenever I want to. We have soap. It's like the little things that I am so, so grateful for. And I'm also in school for psychology and business. Um, and then I just wanted to give back and help other people who feel like they're a failure, who feel like I want to be that advocate for the people. Like it doesn't matter how far you've gone. It doesn't matter what you've done, what you've been through. It does not matter. Moving forward matters, and what you do with it matters. If you want to sit and wallow in it and wallow in your failures, it's not going to help you any. But the best way to heal is to give back to others of what you've been through, just like what Cindy's doing, and giving back to those people who she's been there. And isn't it so healing, Cindy, whenever like you help someone who's going through that same position that you were in? So yeah, there's there's mine.
Mhm. Wonderful story. So we have divorce and addiction. We get to tap into those today and talk about. So we're gonna put those on front stage. So then I'm curious to know, like, on the backstage piece of it, the thinking process, what was going through your mind, some of those in those moments when you was going through this process. And like if you had to tell like the real, like, why is this important so much right now for you to tell this story specifically? Because there's so much failure in our past, but why this story? So I'm asking you, why this story, Cindy? Why this story?
It's one that I literally held back for so many years. I too was very I was afraid. I was just afraid to tell my story, because I resonate with what you say, Mariah, in terms of being a good mom. It's one of those things where it's like, how do I present this in a way that doesn't hurt my daughter? Because she doesn't know all the nitty gritty details that happened between her dad and I, and she doesn't need to know that. So but I think it's important for me to like be able to move forward and serve the women that I want to serve, by telling the story. And I have to tell you that I jumped into this, coaching full time only a few years back. So I spent actually like 30 some odd years actually working in clinical research and preventative medicine, in the health and wellness industry. So, coaching, I graduated from Coach U maybe 20 years ago and did it as kind of like a side hustle because I mean, I needed extra money, right? So it was like I got into fit, all the things that I could do to like pull myself up and out, but actually make extra money as well. Coaching just being one of them. But yeah, I just felt it was so important. And I had a lot of encouragement that you need to like tell your story. It's one thing to serve these women in closed, context, like one-on-one coaching, and I've got a group coaching program, but to actually put myself out there in a different way. This was my year to like, and I was telling Asher before we actually went on that this was my big year to say yes, but yes with discernment, to actually put myself out there in a way that I hadn't before. And I got to tell you, it was scary. It was really scary the first couple of times to just come out and say, how do I actually talk about this and tell people like what I've been through, and I even question, is somebody really going to get any value out of this? Because so many people have been divorced. But and it's just me being me and telling my story. And if maybe somebody needs to hear it the way I tell it will help them, then to me, then it's worth it. And so that was my way of saying, yes, I'm going to step into myself a little bit more. It's more growth on my end to step into more of my story fully. So that's why now.
Why now? Okay. No, that's interesting, by the way. As a matter of fact, I told my therapist today, I'm like, I always talk about her all the time. Because every time I have a conversation, I'm like, we was talking about this today too. But we was talking about my own, because, very similar here. I felt like I needed to like put my voice out there to have a conversation with the world, to see what the world thinks about what I'm thinking. And I find value in other people's thinking. So I would love to know if they find value in my own thinking too. So when I was thinking about my story, you were sharing this now. It's not easy to come out and say these things, because then you gotta think about it. Like, some people heal by having a conversation, some people heal by themselves, but different people heal in different ways. And I think that when we start sharing stuff, it's also healing for us, because you adding value to other people, therefore makes you feel like you value. It's like the value exchange is happening for you. So now you're like, okay, I can do this more. Because somebody's finding value in it. So when you was talking about this and you're like, why this story? I can see, because he's probably helping you heal too. And
Yes.
he probably helping you make somebody feel something that you wish you felt, but didn't know how to feel it. Or you wish you thought, but you didn't know how to think it. But now they get to hear your stuff. Because yeah, it's embarrassing at first when people get hit by it, like, oh my God, I'm like, divorce happening. Like, I didn't meet the mark. I didn't hit the mark on this one. Like, I failed. I missed the bullseye. Me. So
Yeah,
yeah.
there's a lot of shame. There was a lot of shame and embarrassment
Mm,
around it. So yeah, I totally relate to what you're saying. Yeah, sure.
mm. Mariah, why tell this story? You have plenty in the treasure trove in your vault. Why put this one on auction? Tell me.
So I think it's a lot of like a lot of what Cindy said, just like that is I feel like that's like the lowest that a person can go besides like a few other things, right? Like murder or something. But still, I mean, um I know that even the murderers, even the people who have done really bad things and they've gone really, really low, like I said before, I'm such an advocate for showing people that it's possible. And it doesn't matter how far you've gone, but the addiction aspect of it, like just for people to, because people tell me all the time, they're like, you don't look like you were ever, like you were ever an addict. You just don't look like that. And so I was homeless. I was a prostitute. I was a mess. I mean, I was a mess. I was the one that you see on the street that's like you're like, "Oh gosh," like,
Mm,
like the one of those people. And so I just really think that it's so important that it people know that it's possible to get back up regardless of how many failures. Like that's why I say the 27 rehabs. That's why I say that. And like it doesn't matter. I didn't give up. And the
mm,
people, you want to know something else too? Just like both of you guys, because I know, Asher, if you're doing this, you probably have like a really incredible story, and I'm gonna have to
mm,
go listen to it. But if you're doing this, you have a really incredible story as well. Um, but it's like the people who have failed the most and who have had the hardest struggles, like we're built for entrepreneurship. Like we
Ah!
can we can we can tackle failure. We can tackle like we've already been through that. This is like the little small hits that we get here, like a rejection or like something didn't work at first. We were built for this. So taking our mess and making it a message, that's my thing.
Mm. When I came up with my first book, I called it Turn Your Traumas into Treasure. And the title hits me when I think I was sleeping. I wake up, I was like, oh my God, that's the name. So it was
Mm,
it was the idea that I don't have traumas, I only have treasures. And
mm,
sometimes we don't understand like what things really mean. Sometimes we like I see life this way, right? Like the university of the universe. There's only one university that exists. The original university, the university of the universe, which is life experience.
right, yes.
So then when you went through that school, you get certified in being you in your purpose. So now
Mm,
once you get certified in that purpose from the life school, the university of the universe, then now what happened? You can really connect with a lot of people. And I realized that because something don't make sense right now, further down the road it will. And how I look at it is that okay, so in the future, at a certain point in life, you're gonna get to a door, and that door gonna require a certain kind of key. But
mm,
that key is in your past. It's in your history. Now, if you didn't have that experience, you would never collect that key to open this door. So just imagine you get to that door, right? And you can say, "Oh, I need to open the door." Like, no, well, the key that you left beer back in your on your 21st birthday, that place you was at, you was trying to avoid, that key was for this door. So now you're like,
that's
"Oh,
good.
I'm not mad at my past anymore because now it's treasure because I'm getting into this vault. Without the
Yeah,
key, I wouldn't be able to get in. So now I start
yeah.
valuing my past, my story, my history, the challenges I've had. I'm like, okay, it's preparing me for what? For this location I'm gonna get to for this door I'm gonna open, and I need the key to
Mm,
open the door. So that's what
wow.
I look up my past, my history. So I always tell people I don't have trauma, I only have treasure. Because
Mm.
there's another way of I also kind of explain this where I am too oh the lines are missing me right now. Let me skip that one. He's gonna come to me after. But going back to the vault and the treasure. What are your thoughts, Cindy? You've been shaking your head a lot. What are your thoughts?
Well, first of all, I just want to say, Mariah, you are a complete inspiration. I
Mm-hmm.
just want you to know that. I mean, and I just love the vulnerability as well of being able to come to the table and speak your truth of where you're at. I also loved what you said about self-forgiveness. Um, because yes, even in the divorce journey,
Yeah.
there were a lot of moments where I had to like forgive myself as well, especially when I got back into the dating scene. And the husband that I have now is beautiful. He's a beautiful man. Love him to death. But I kept him at arm's length for a very long time because of, again, fears, etc. And I've had to do a lot of forgiving of myself on that. So I just wanted to point that out, that I really appreciate what you're saying in terms of self-forgiveness is so important as well. But you are an inspiration. I just really appreciate your vulnerability that you brought here today. And for you, Asher, I love what you're saying. I love that analogy in terms of, yes, the past holds the keys, right? In terms of what door we're going to open, who we're going to become, what our future is even going to look like, and how we can use that to really help whoever we are meant to help. I think all of these things are such blessings. I mean, really, I look at, we're here to learn, right? We're here to learn and grow. And so when we have these experiences that may look like, as you say, they're a trauma or they're tragic, whatever, just failures, whatever descriptor we want to put on it, I think they are so designed for us to open us up so that we can literally take that beautiful lesson with us, as you're saying, and unlock whatever door we need to like walk through to the other side and help somebody else. So I think I'm just shaking my head here going, I'm hearing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that is incredible too. Thank you so much for sharing that, Cindy. And I do commend Mariah for sharing and being open and vulnerable with your story. You know, what I was trying to remember earlier, this line I was trying to remember earlier, it goes like this: I am too selfish with my traumas to have you visit them, but I'm very generous with my treasures, so I choose to share them with you. So now we go from
Ooh,
trauma to treasure. So looking at you, Mariah, it will be the same thing, right? You're very selfish with your trauma to have people visit them, but you're very generous with your treasure. You choose to share with other people. That's what we're doing right now with the stuff that we experience, right? So you're sharing
right.
that treasure because it is treasure, because
Yeah.
right now it's gonna add value to somebody's life.
Yeah.
So if it's not, then it wouldn't be,
Right.
right? What are your
Yeah.
thoughts?
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I've spoke at a lot of events and I'm very open. I don't mind sharing, whenever I first got sober, I was so closed off and I was so ashamed and I was so embarrassed. And I probably weighed like 90 pounds soaking wet. I'm 140 now. And so I was just like, I mean, I was about dead. And I didn't want to tell anybody anything. I was so angry and like just I think I was mad at myself. That's where that self-forgiveness comes in, Cindy. I was just so mad at myself, like how stupid and just all these things telling myself that I'm you're not worth anything. No man's ever going to want you, or let alone respect you based off of what you've done and what you've been through. He's going to have to take on a child. And my son's uh, biological father passed away from an overdose. And so like, like all of these things happened all at once, but whenever I first shared my story, it was like 6 months after I got sober, and nobody really knew much about me. But whenever I first did, I had like three of the women that were in the program with me come up to me and just start crying and being like, wow, like I thought that I was the only one. I've never told anybody this, but blah, 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 and start telling me their story. And the more I spoke at events and the more I spoke at like churches and things, people would come up to me and they would tell me, like, wow, like I've done this, like, and you're like, I don't feel alone now. And it is a treasure. I mean, why do you think AA meetings happen? Why do you think like divorce, like there's like divorce groups for people who've been divorced? Because there's power in community whenever people have been through the same tragedy. And so it's those treasures. It's like in a group full of divorced women or a group full of divorced men or a group of addicts together, it's one big treasure trove, like you're talking about. I mean, we have all these treasures to just exchange. So I really love that. And everybody is so unique in that people who come out of it and come out on the other side. And I think that it's like a for power. We're almost like we're ready to like once we've overcome this really difficult thing, you emerge from it like a completely different person. I mean, you do. I don't even recognize the person that I used to be. So yeah, my life's full of treasures now, and I treasure my son more than I would have if I wouldn't have lost custody of him. Like, I'm so grateful that I have him with me. I didn't have him for 5 years. And that was probably the worst out of everything that I've been through. That was probably the worst thing is that I couldn't get sober even for my child for a long time. But now I know that I have, and now I know that there's other people who are struggling to get their kids back. And so yeah, I could talk forever on treasure and trauma. I love that, Asher. I love that.
You guys are powerful. So incredible, by the way. So incredible. I love it.
Thank
And
you.
when you was talking about earlier, Cindy was like the divorce, like a lot of divorce happened in America, but when it happened to you, if you feel like you're the only one. Like when you ask the question, why me? Why me make you feel like you're the only one that's happening to? Until you get the snap out of that thinking or that thought, like, oh, I'm not the only one. The other people like me that are going through it. I need to talk to them. I need to reach out to them, see what their thinking process is. But oftentimes, if you feel like you're the only one, you're alone in it. Like this is only you.
No doubt. No doubt. And so, again, my divorce happened many years ago. And so at that time, there wasn't a lot of what we have now in terms of like support groups that you could like get into, not accessible to me at that time anyway. And I did feel all alone in it because most of my friends were still married, so and you can only vent so many times to a friend when they're like, yeah, like how many times are we going to hear this? So I didn't want to do that either. So I did feel completely alone in it. I saw a therapist for a little bit, didn't really help. All it did was it gave me an opportunity, and this is not me slamming therapists because there's plenty of really great therapists out there, but I wasn't ready for that at that time. It was just a place for me to go in and actually cry because I didn't want to cry in front of my daughter. So I needed a safe place to be able to go and process feelings. Because again, I was such a master at tucking my feelings. And Mariah, you were saying earlier about I had a lot of grief. I was denying the grief. It took me many years to get to the point where I could actually let out the feelings. And this is when I was really ready for therapy. And that actually happened when I was in my yoga therapy training. It was actually one of the teachers was a therapist for grief relief. And I can't even remember what he said or he did. We were doing, I don't know, some postures or whatever, but we got done with it and I crumpled on the floor and I just started bawling my eyeballs out because I literally felt like he pierced my heart. I had no idea what had happened. I was like, no clue. Blah, blah, blah. Talk about clearing a room. Like everybody bolted immediately. And I was just sitting there. He came over, just sat by me. And I'm like, I don't know what you just did. I was shaking. I'm like, I don't know what's even happening right now. I said, but I need to be working with you. So I ended up working with him for quite a few years. And the big reveal or revelation in that was, he's like, Cindy, you need to sit in your sadness. And I was like, well, what do you mean I got to sit in my sadness? I'm like, who wants to do that? Who wants to sit in pain? I mean, that we're as humans, we are like wired to like run away from pain. Right? We don't want to sit in that. But I think that was such a big aha moment for me because, it was like your feelings are valid, where I never thought my feelings were valid before. It was such a revelation for me to like say, okay, my feelings are valid and I should be able to feel my feelings here. And that to me was like a big pivotal moment too, a big pivotal moment for me to actually start really moving forward again, because I felt so alone and no one's going to understand where I'm at. And because I was so good. Susie Sunshine here. Put the mask on. No one knows what I'm really going through. I was great at that. So I mean, it's interesting. I found community later, and I think it's so important. What Mariah said, what you're bringing up, Asher, is that community is so huge, and that I think that there's so much more access to community now, just because there's so much. I mean, we can do these Zooms, there's so much social media. I mean, we're going back to like, we're going back a few decades, when this all happened. And we didn't have that. I mean, we barely had computers. I mean, we didn't have even cell phones. I mean, I hate to say that, but I'm kind of getting up there.
You look really good. I don't know how old you are. You don't have to tell me how old you are, but you look beautiful. You don't look like you have decades ago of a divorce. You don't. You look fabulous.
It's been over 3 decades.
Yeah, I told her that when she jumped on earlier too. I was like, wow, you sparkling
Anyway,
Cindy.
Tangent off. I didn't mean to tangent off there, but yeah, I mean, I think it's so important, community, because feeling alone in it, there's nothing worse than it. Again, you can either stay sunk in that. I just did a whole bunch of masking, which was not healthy.
I was gonna ask you that, like, what was that trampoline moment for you? But you kind of run right into, you kind of talk about the guy that kind of hit you with that one thing, and you just kind of like, oh, that was it, and you start bouncing back. But I'm curious about what was your trampoline moment to Mariah when you was like, when you hit that thing, you finally recognize you start bouncing back. Do you remember that moment for you?
Yeah. So you mean like of like the trampoline, like where I finally started getting better?
Mm-hmm.
Or
Mm-hmm.
oh,
Mm-hmm.
okay. So um I had really hated God throughout this whole entire time of my addiction and stuff. Um and I like right before I got sober, it was like 2 weeks before I got sober, I got down on my knees and I'm like, if you're even real, like, and if you could help me, if you're the God that everybody says that you are, if you could help me, please get me out of this. I don't care. Like I was in a bathroom of somebody I didn't even know. And I was sick. I didn't have my drugs at the time. And so a couple weeks went by and I went to jail. Um, for actually saving somebody's life who overdosed, which was weird, but anyway, it was meant to happen. And I don't feel bad for I got a felony out of all of that. But if that wouldn't have happened, I wouldn't have gotten sober. And so I went to jail and then they told me that I could go to this faith-based rehab, which was my 27th time going to a rehab. And I'm like, okay, whatever. Like, I just want to get out of jail. And I went, and whenever I got there, all of the people, that community aspect really is everybody just welcomed me and they hugged me and they didn't like act like I don't know. I guess I had like a really bad view of Christians at the time because everybody was so judgmental to me. At like the churches I would try to go to during my addiction and just like go for just support or just sometimes they had food. I mean, like, so but they were all really judged. But whenever I got there, everybody was so welcoming and so loving. And I felt safe for the first time in probably a decade. I did. I felt safe. Like I have a bed, like it's a warm bed. I have people who they don't look like they're gonna hurt me. They don't look like they have any ill intentions. I don't have to sleep with my purse up, with me. Um, and so I was there for a year and I spent that year, we didn't have phones in there. It was literally like old times. Like we had no TV, no phones, and it was the best year of my life. Of
Mm-hmm.
my life. It was the best year of my life. I had no distractions. I wasn't thinking about boys or getting a boyfriend. I literally just took a year and focused on myself and worked through everything and sat in my stuff. I had no other choice. It's really easy to keep busy and distract yourself, but there's only so much cleaning you can do at that place. There's only so much like um books that you can read. So that's literally what I did. I took a year and worked on myself and I got closer to God and I have that's really what changed me. That and then after I got out of after I got out of there, I stayed focused and I got my son back. And I can never, and then I have a daughter too, so and I got married and we moved down here and I can't ever see myself going back. But yeah, does that answer your question?
Mm-hmm. It did. It did. Oh my God. Thank you
Okay.
so much. This was incredible, ladies. So much power in your stories. So much power in your stories. We're gonna wrap up. We had the time to wrap up, and it was awesome chatting with you, Mariah and Cindy. Going through we call those the divorce and addiction. That's probably gonna be the title of this episode here a little bit with some other stuff. But if we had to go back a little bit and just kind of wrap up to figure out how people can reach you if they want to reach you, Mariah, what's the best way they can reach you?
So my Facebook is Mariah Pettry, and they can come on there. My the name of my business is Awaken Her Coaching. Um, but those are probably the two best ways to get in touch with me.
Okay, and same with you, Cindy.
So, best way to get in touch with me is go to my website. My business name is Tranquil Heart Wellness, all one word. So it's www.tranquilheartwellness.com. Or you can email me at cindy@tranquilheartwellness, all one word.com. Those are probably the two best ways to get in touch with me.
Perfect. Two closing questions. So for you, first start with Cindy. What is your biggest takeaway from this conversation today?
Failure is a key that opens up your heart to becoming your next best version of you.
Wow. Thank you so much for sharing that. The
That's
key.
so good.
It is failure.
Yeah.
That was awesome. Mariah, what about you?
I think my biggest takeaway has to do with the looking at my past as as treasures. I really do. I've never seen it that way. Um, so looking at my past and looking at other people and their past as treasures instead of, you know, thinking that, judging anybody or anything like that, but looking at other people in their past as one big treasure that, and like Cindy said, that gets them to where they want to be in life.
I
Our
love that.
failure is just the step, like each failure is just a stepstone to get to where we need to be.
You know, you know, oftentimes people always look into the future, but this is something I would say. I would say the past is all you have. All you
Yeah.
have. And the future is what you want.
Mm-hmm.
But then if you think about if you decrease the value of your past, if you depreciate your past, if I give you more future, won't you do the same thing to it? Right?
Yeah.
So if we can start going back and start increase the value for our past, appreciate it, right? If your past was gold,
Yeah.
and gold go like the stock goes up in value, wouldn't you want to appreciate your past more? So when you appreciate the past, we increase the value of it. So I
Yeah.
realized that, there's a saying that says, those who study history are masters of the futures. I would say the same thing. Those who study their own history are master of their own future. So I recognize the power in our own past. So I started studying mine. And I'm like, you gotta go back and study your past, because if you don't appreciate it, doesn't matter what kind of future you're getting. You're gonna put it in the same place that your past exists in, because that's where you store everything at. And you're gonna put it in a place that doesn't have any value. So that
I
means
have a
you're gonna
question.
depreciate it. Okay, go ahead.
I just have a quick question. Did you find patterns in your whenever you looked to did you study your past and find any patterns whenever you did that?
Oh yes. Oh yeah. See,
Okay.
so so one of the things that I realized about my own history, because I was studying not just my history but my parents too. Because
Yeah.
what I recognize is that this entire journey that we're on is a family project. It's not
Hmm.
just mine, right?
Yeah.
So now I'm fixing shit that they did, right?
Right.
That is passed down to me. So then some of
Yeah.
the stuff I'm going through is not I'm not the one that initiated it, right? it's a
Right.
continuation of something else. So I gotta go back and like, okay, so my father, his father, his parents, so and so on. Like, what was some of the things that were going to I didn't finish that I gotta finish? So now
Yeah.
I start blaming myself, like, oh, I'm suffering from something I didn't start.
Right.
So I'm here to like,
So good.
bridge certain things, mend certain things, correct certain things, change certain course. So I started taking value in my history.
I
So that's one.
love that.
I
I
do too.
started talking about, I say programming, but it is the generational messages, right, that are handed down to us that
Mhm.
for the most part, when we're young, I mean, we suck this all in, right? When we're like little and we just take this carte blanche, the truth. And I think that, as you say, examining our past and appreciating our past and just seeing those patterns, as you're saying, Mariah, are so beneficial because the more we can become conscious of that, and
Mhm.
Yeah.
because for the most part, we're unconscious of a lot of these patterns, right? We don't see it until we have some kind of disruption, our trauma, whatever, the failure that opens us up then to, and if we choose to take that awareness and really start to appreciate and look for those patterns and say, that's where
Mhm.
that came from. And
Yep.
Yes.
and then I think that it also takes away a lot of the blame and shame that we could potentially give to others that came before us, right? Because so many
Yep.
people like, well, it's all my parents' fault, and
Mhm.
yeah, it's like I can go back to this is what my father said, but you know what? I don't blame and shame him for that. I just understand that from his generational perspective, that
Mhm.
would be the normal response,
Yep.
Mhm.
in terms of me coming home and saying, what did you do? So I think it's very interesting, but it's a really great point to bring up. I'm so glad you said that, Asher, because it's so true, right? It's
Mhm.
so true in terms of the more awake you are, the more you can heal some of that generational trauma that's been
Yeah.
Mhm.
handed down.
Yep.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yes.
Closing question. I'm gonna start with you, Cindy. What is that one thing or two thing when people do it drives you crazy? If you had to share.
Ugh. I think the one thing that does drive me crazy is staying in victim role.
Mhm.
It's staying in victim role, and when you, even if you're reaching out for help and you're just it, I understand they're not ready to hear it, but it's the repetition of that kind of drives me crazy. It's like, do you really want to stay there? And I can give compassion and I have empathy for it, but there's still a side of me that goes, I wish I get it now.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Anything else? Anything else? What about you got another one?
I don't know. Pet peeves, when somebody lets their dog poop on my yard.
Yes. Yes.
My little grandbabies are gonna be running around in my grass. I don't need your dog pooping on my lawn and you're not picking it up. Come on.
Okay,
Yeah.
Mariah, your turn. What is that one thing or two thing when people do drive you crazy?
Oh gosh. Okay, the only thing that comes to my mind right now is whenever people like smack whenever they're chewing. I know that might not have anything to do with this, but whenever they chew, like I can't. Like I can't. Seriously. Uh okay, I'm glad you
I
it sounds like you
feel
can.
that.
Okay. I'm like, ugh. Um, yeah. And another thing, um, man, you want to know what something that really bothers me is somebody who's really pushy, even whenever you say like no to them. I've been dealing with that a lot lately with like in my DMs of all these people who are like trying to pitch to me in my DMs, and it's like they're saying like I say to no to them and they'll just keep saying, "Oh, but no, you need to learn about this." And I'm like, no, I don't block. Like I don't know, things like that, really pushy. Um, and then the smacking, I can't do. No, just can't.
Fair enough. We all got them. We all got something. Like we all got them.
Yes.
Yours, Asher? What are yours? I mean, that
Yes.
you got to answer.
Oh,
Great.
you know what? I'm glad you asked. Normally, so the thing that really drives me crazy, very simple. If I'm trying to explain something, I'm trying to explain, and you do not let me finish what I'm trying to explain, you cut me off and start talking, it drives me crazy. because because it often happens where like, oh, actually, I know what you're gonna say. No, actually, you don't. Let me finish what I'm saying. You can tell me what I'm saying first. But when people do that, it kind of like, that's kind of like, because I used to do it a lot. So
Mhm.
oftentimes, some of the stuff that we like don't like, we're guilty of, used to be guilty of something like that, right? So I used to do it to a lot of people, and I realized, oh my God, that's what I used to do. But then I realized, okay, it still happened to me. So that's one of them.
Yeah.
Okay.
I feel like I feel like that, and then I know we have to go. I feel like people do that out of like they want you to know that they know before you tell them, like they're so intelligent. I think that might be what that is. I'm not sure, but
Uh,
that's
uh,
my guess. That's what my son does.
well, so some of it, because I think about me, it was just that, like, something when I thought pops in my head,
Mm.
I'm just ready to share it, because what happened is I'm gonna forget it. I'm like, oh, I don't want to forget it. Let me say it before I forget it, right? And I never realized the power of like having a conversation. Like, I'm talking to you, then when you finish, whatever shows up, that's what I talk about, not what I was
Yeah.
thinking about when you first said it, right? And it's kind
Right.
of
Yeah.
hard to navigate that piece when you're like, oh, I got something to say now. Like, give me the mic, I got something to say, right? So yeah,
Yes.
that piece of it. So awesome. This was an incredible
Right.
conversation. I love this energy here.
Yes. Thank you for having me, having us.
Yes, thank you so much. It's such a pleasure to meet both of you. What a really rich conversation, I think, Asher. I mean, I don't know how you feel about it, but I thought it was wonderful. Thank you so much.
Yes.
I thought it was rich too. I thought it was so rich. I'm about to go get my money. I'm just kidding. Yeah, this is awesome. Well, guys,
Yeah.
you too, if you're watching this live right now, just go ahead and put hashtag live in the chat. Or go to, if you catch this on replay, go ahead and put hashtag replay in the comment section so we know that you kind of heard us and you all did listen to our story. And today you heard from Mariah and you heard from Cindy, incredible story. We talk about divorce, dating, doubts. And we talk about addiction, and we go through failure, which is failure is often, so in my own definition, personal definition, what failure is simply a new experience, if you really think about it. So, oftentimes we always spin that success wheel, and success is like the clock. It went from 1 to 24, right? And in order for you to break the cycle of that success, you gotta fail at it. And I think
Mm,
failure is just a new experience. So oftentimes when I'm feeling like, oh, I'm getting another new experience. What I'm gonna do with it? That's the
mm,
question. Oftentimes we're like, no, we get new experiences. Because just imagine if things cycle the same way over and over, life get very boring.
yeah.
So I gotta fail at the boring cycle. I'm gonna fail it. It's gonna fail for me so I can create something new. So you gotta fail
Hmm.
at that success cycle. So that's how I look at it. That's me personally. So I never get mad at my failures because like, oh, I got another new experience. I wouldn't have
Hmm.
it if I didn't fail at the cycle.
Hmm.
So okay. Any last thoughts? Any last thoughts before we close out? Any last thoughts? From both of you?
I don't think so. I think I'm
All
good.
right. I
I,
like
I,
I
I
like a
just thank
conversation
you.
that closed. All right, folks. You're tuning to Pandora's Awareness Podcast, a place where we collect stories and circulate life-changing wisdom. And with that, make it an awesome